You've been there before, standing at the edge of something that feels impossibly big, impossibly important, and your entire world seems to be falling apart, right before you need to be your strongest. The promotion interview approaches, and suddenly, your confidence crumbles. The relationship deepens, and you find yourself sabotaging everything good. The creative project nears completion, and your inner critic becomes deafening. You feel the weight of preparation, the strange way life seems to test you right before breakthrough moments, as if the universe itself is orchestrating some elaborate examination of your readiness. Your body responds with familiar signals of stress, that tight feeling in your chest, the restless energy that makes sleep elusive, the way your mind spirals between excitement and terror. You wonder if you're the only one who experiences this pattern, this curious dance between growth and resistance that appears whenever you're about to step into something significantly larger than your current self. What Jean Piaget discovered about this phenomenon wasn't through studying adults in therapy sessions or corporate boardrooms. His most profound insight into how the universe prepares us for important transitions came from watching children navigate the seemingly simple task of understanding that liquid poured from a tall, narrow glass into a short, wide bowl remains the same amount. The child's journey through this realization revealed something extraordinary about how all human beings are prepared for cognitive leaps, how our entire system seems designed to create the exact conditions necessary for breakthrough moments. Today, I'm going to show you the hidden mechanism that Piaget uncovered, why the universe appears to test you before every important transition, and how understanding this natural process can transform your relationship with growth forever. In 1952, at his laboratory in Geneva, Piaget sat across from 7-year-old Marie, a bright child who had been participating in his conservation experiments for several months. Marie had consistently failed what seemed like a simple task. Piaget would show her 2 identical glasses filled with the same amount of water, wait for her to confirm they contained equal amounts, then pour the contents of one glass into a shorter, wider container. When asked which container held more water, Marie would confidently point to the tall glass, insisting it contained more liquid despite having watched the transfer moments before. Her certainty was absolute, her reasoning clear to her young mind. The tall glass looked like it had more, therefore it must have more. This wasn't a failure of memory or attention, it was something far more interesting. For weeks, Marie had been stuck in what Piaget termed a state of cognitive disequilibrium, though she showed no outward signs of distress about her responses. She answered with confidence, even enthusiasm, seemingly unaware that her reasoning contained what adults would consider a fundamental error. But Piaget noticed something remarkable happening beneath the surface of her apparent certainty. During their sessions, Marie would sometimes pause longer before answering, her eyes moving between the containers with increased intensity. She began asking questions that hadn't occurred to her before. Why did he keep pouring the water back and forth? What was the point of changing the containers? Her questions revealed a mind beginning to sense something important was missing from her understanding, even though she couldn't yet articulate what that something might be. The breakthrough came during their session on a rainy Thursday morning in March. Piaget performed the familiar routine, 2 glasses with equal water, confirmation from Marie that they matched, then the transfer to the wider container. But this time, instead of immediately pointing to the tall glass, Marie stared at both containers with an expression of deep concentration that Piaget had never seen from her before. Her small hand moved toward the tall glass, then stopped. She looked at Piaget with what he later described as a mixture of confusion and excitement, as if she was on the verge of discovering something that would change everything she thought she knew about the world. "Wait," she said quietly, her voice carrying an uncertainty that had been completely absent from all her previous responses. "The water, when you poured it, Nothing disappeared. What happened in Marie's mind at that moment represents one of the most profound insights into human development ever documented. Piaget realized he was witnessing the exact moment when a child's cognitive structures reorganized themselves to accommodate a new way of understanding reality. Marie wasn't simply learning a new fact about liquid conservation. Her entire mental framework for understanding physical relationships was shifting to include the concept that appearance and quantity could be separate phenomena. The weeks of apparent failure, the growing uncertainty, the questions that seemed to come from nowhere, these weren't obstacles to learning. They were the essential preparation that her mind required to make this cognitive leap possible. But here's what Piaget found most fascinating about this process. The preparation period, what he called the stage of cognitive conflict, created exactly the conditions Marie needed to abandon her old way of thinking and construct a new, more sophisticated understanding. Her confidence in the tall glass containing more water had to be thoroughly shaken before she could see the situation clearly. The questions that emerged during her weeks of struggle weren't random curiosity. They were her mind's way of probing the edges of her current understanding, testing for weak points where new information could enter. Her growing uncertainty wasn't a sign of confusion or failure. It was evidence that her cognitive system was preparing to reorganize itself around a more accurate model of reality. This pattern of preparation through apparent disruption appears throughout Piaget's documentation of cognitive development, and it extends far beyond childhood learning. When children transition from the pre-operational stage to concrete operational thinking, typically around age 7, they don't simply wake up one day with new abilities. The months leading up to this transition are characterized by increasing inconsistency in their reasoning, moments of clarity followed by confusion, and a growing sense that their previous ways of understanding the world aren't quite adequate for the complexity they're beginning to perceive. The child who confidently insisted that spreading coins further apart meant there were more coins begins to hesitate, to count and recount, to ask questions about number and space that reveal a mind grappling with concepts too large for its current framework. You know this feeling intimately, though you might not have connected it to your own moments of important transition. 3 months before you landed your current job, everything in your previous position began to feel wrong. Tasks that had once energized you became draining. Conversations with colleagues felt superficial. The work that had once provided meaning started to feel like an elaborate game you were no longer interested in playing. You found yourself questioning assumptions about your career that had seemed unshakable just months before. This wasn't burnout, though it might have felt similar. This was your mind's way of preparing you for a transition you hadn't yet consciously recognized you needed to make. The universe, as you call it, doesn't create chaos before important moments out of cosmic cruelty or some divine test of worthiness. What feels like external pressure is actually the natural result of your own expanding awareness, coming into contact with structures in your life that can no longer contain who you're becoming. Just as Marie's mind created the cognitive conflict necessary for her to abandon her attachment to appearance-based reasoning, your mind creates the emotional and practical conflicts necessary for you to abandon attachments to identities, relationships, and situations that no longer serve your development. The discomfort you feel before major transitions isn't the universe testing your resolve. It's your own consciousness preparing you for the cognitive and emotional reorganization required to handle new levels of complexity and responsibility. Think about that relationship that ended 6 months before you met the person who became your life partner. The breakup felt devastating at the time, a cosmic joke played on you just when you thought you had found stability. But looking back, You can see how that ending forced you to examine patterns in your relationships that you had never questioned before. The pain of that loss made you curious about attachment styles, communication patterns, and emotional needs in ways that comfort never could have. You spent months feeling uncertain about your capacity for lasting love, questioning assumptions about partnership that had guided your choices for years. This period of questioning wasn't punishment or bad timing. It was the essential preparation that allowed you to recognize and appreciate a fundamentally different kind of relationship when it appeared. Piaget documented this pattern across all major developmental transitions because it reflects something fundamental about how consciousness expands. Growth doesn't happen through simple addition of new information to existing frameworks. Real development requires the dissolution of current structures to make space for more sophisticated ways of organizing experience. A child cannot understand conservation while maintaining the belief that appearance directly corresponds to quantity. An adult cannot develop mature intimacy while clinging to relationship patterns based on childhood survival strategies. An employee cannot step into leadership roles while maintaining an identity built around following others' directions without question. The preparation phase serves multiple functions that Piaget identified through decades of careful observation. First, it creates what he called accommodation pressure, the cognitive tension that motivates a mind to seek new ways of organizing information. When your current frameworks become increasingly inadequate for handling the complexity you're experiencing, your mind naturally begins searching for alternative approaches. Second, it provides opportunities for what Piaget termed assimilation practice, the chance to test new ideas and approaches within the safety of familiar contexts. The months of questioning before a major career change allow you to experiment with new professional identities through small projects, conversations, and internal exploration without the pressure of complete commitment. Here's something most people miss about this process, and it's perhaps the most important insight from Piaget's work on cognitive development. The timing of your readiness for important transitions isn't determined by external circumstances or arbitrary deadlines. Your mind creates the conditions for growth when it has developed sufficient complexity to handle the next level of challenge. That promotion opportunity appears when your leadership capacity has reached the point where managing others would stimulate rather than overwhelm your development. That relationship deepens when your emotional maturity can handle the vulnerability and responsibility that intimacy requires. That creative project reaches completion when your technical skills and artistic vision have evolved enough to support bringing something new into the world. You might pause here and recognize this pattern in your own life. Think about the last major transition you navigated successfully. Can you remember the months of preparation that preceded it? The way your old life began to feel constrictive, the questions that emerged about paths you had never seriously considered, the strange combination of excitement and terror that accompanied your growing awareness that change was inevitable. If you're experiencing something similar right now, that restless energy you feel isn't a sign that something is wrong. It's evidence that your consciousness is preparing for its next expansion. What makes this process feel like cosmic interference is the way it disrupts our preference for linear progress and predictable outcomes. We want growth to feel like climbing a steady incline, each step building obviously on the previous one. Instead, real development feels more like Piaget's conservation experiments, periods of apparent regression or confusion followed by sudden reorganization around new principles. The executive who finds herself questioning everything about her leadership style right before being offered a vice president position isn't experiencing imposter syndrome. She's undergoing the cognitive preparation necessary to handle responsibilities that require a fundamentally different approach to influence and decision-making. But there's something even more profound happening in this process. that Piaget discovered through his work with children, transitioning between developmental stages. The universe isn't just preparing you for the next challenge, it's preparing you to become the kind of person who can handle challenges of that magnitude with increasing ease and confidence. Marie's struggle with conservation wasn't just about learning that liquid quantity remains constant, regardless of container shape. She was developing the cognitive flexibility to separate appearance from reality across all domains of her experience. This single breakthrough opened pathways for understanding number, space, time, and causality that would serve her development for years to come. Your current period of preparation is teaching you skills and expanding your capacity in ways that extend far beyond the immediate transition you're anticipating. The emotional resilience you're developing while navigating uncertainty about your career will serve you in every future professional challenge. The communication skills you're refining while working through relationship conflicts will enhance every intimate connection you build. The creative problem-solving you're practicing while bringing your current project to completion will inform every future artistic endeavor. The universe prepares you not just for what's coming next, but for the kind of person you need to become to handle whatever comes after that. I want you to pause and think about this for a moment. Have you ever noticed how the biggest challenges in your life often came right before your most significant breakthroughs? Maybe it was struggling with self-doubt right before landing your dream job, or facing relationship conflicts just before experiencing deeper intimacy than you thought possible. Can you see the pattern now? You're not alone in this experience. Every person watching this has felt that strange way life seems to test your resolve right when you need it most. If this resonates with you, leave a comment and simply write, "I see the pattern now." Your recognition might be exactly what someone else needs to read today to understand their own journey isn't a series of random obstacles, but a carefully orchestrated preparation for who they're becoming. You have more wisdom in your experience than you realize, and sharing it creates healing for others walking the same path. Piaget's research revealed that this preparation process follows predictable stages that mirror the developmental patterns he observed in children. The first stage he called initial equilibrium, where your current way of understanding and navigating your world feels adequate and stable. This is the period when your job provides satisfaction, your relationships feel secure, and your creative projects flow with manageable challenge. You're operating within frameworks that serve you well enough to maintain comfort and productivity. But beneath this apparent stability, your consciousness is quietly expanding, developing complexity that will eventually outgrow these current structures. The second stage, disequilibrium, begins when your expanding awareness starts to notice inconsistencies between your current reality and your growing potential. This is when work tasks that once felt meaningful begin to feel mechanical. When relationship patterns that once provided security start to feel restrictive. When creative approaches that once excited you begin to feel formulaic and limiting. The discomfort of this stage isn't a sign that you've chosen the wrong path or made poor decisions. It's evidence that your consciousness has developed beyond what your current circumstances can stimulate and support. During disequilibrium, you experience what Piaget called cognitive conflict, the internal tension between your evolving understanding and your established ways of operating. This manifests as the restless feeling that something needs to change. Though you might not yet know what or how, you find yourself asking questions that hadn't occurred to you before. Why am I doing this work? What do I really want from partnership? What am I trying to express through my creative efforts? These questions emerge not from dissatisfaction with your choices, but from your mind's natural process of testing the boundaries of your current frameworks to identify where growth is needed. The third stage, exploration, is where you begin experimenting with new approaches while still maintaining your current structures. This is the period of networking while keeping your current job, having deeper conversations while staying in your current relationship, or developing new creative techniques while completing familiar projects. Exploration allows you to gather information about possibilities without the pressure of immediate commitment. It's your mind's way of researching options before making the significant changes that growth will eventually require. The fourth stage, reorganization, is where you make the structural changes necessary to align your external reality with your internal development. This is when you accept the new position, commit to the deeper relationship, or launch the creative project that represents your evolved artistic vision. Reorganization often feels dramatic because it involves dismantling established patterns, but it's actually the natural culmination of the preparation work you've been doing throughout the previous stages. The final stage, new equilibrium, is where you settle into ways of operating that match your expanded capacity. Your new role feels challenging but manageable. Your deeper relationship provides intimacy without overwhelming your emotional resources. Your creative work expresses aspects of your vision that previous projects couldn't accommodate. This equilibrium will maintain itself until your consciousness develops enough complexity to require another round of growth, beginning the cycle again at a higher level of sophistication. Understanding this cycle transforms your relationship with periods of uncertainty and preparation. Instead of interpreting discomfort as evidence that something is wrong, you can recognize it as your system's natural way of preparing for expansion. Instead of resisting the questions and doubts that emerge during transition periods, you can engage with them as valuable information about where your development wants to go next. Instead of feeling victimized by circumstances that seem to test your resolve, you can appreciate them as precisely calibrated challenges designed to develop the capacities you'll need for what's coming. The research from Piaget's laboratory extended this understanding beyond individual development to show how environmental challenges naturally align with developmental readiness. Children aren't randomly presented with conservation tasks or spatial reasoning problems. Their everyday interactions with physical objects create countless opportunities to notice inconsistencies in their thinking. But they only attend to these inconsistencies when their cognitive development has reached the point where such attention would be productive. Similarly, the challenges that appear in your life aren't arbitrary tests from an indifferent universe. They emerge from the natural interaction between your expanding consciousness and a reality that provides exactly the resistance and support needed for continued growth. Consider how this applies to the major transition you're currently navigating or anticipating. The obstacles you're encountering aren't cosmic interference with your plans. They're opportunities for you to develop capacities that your current level of consciousness couldn't access through easier paths. The deadline pressure you're feeling with your creative project is developing your ability to perform under stress and make decisions with incomplete information. The communication challenges you're facing in your relationship are expanding your emotional vocabulary and conflict resolution skills. The leadership responsibilities you're being offered at work are cultivating your capacity to influence others and handle complex decision-making. Each challenge is precisely calibrated to stretch you beyond your current capabilities without overwhelming your system's ability to adapt and integrate new learning. This understanding shifts everything about how you approach periods of preparation and transition. Instead of trying to minimize discomfort or rush through uncertainty, you can allow these experiences to unfold at their natural pace while remaining curious about what they're preparing you to handle. Instead of interpreting setbacks as signs that you're on the wrong path, you can recognize them as course corrections that guide you toward approaches better matched to your authentic development. Instead of feeling isolated in your struggles, you can appreciate that you're participating in the same fundamental process that guides all conscious growth, from Piaget's children learning about conservation to adults navigating any significant life transition. This understanding shifts everything about how you approach periods of preparation and transition. Instead of trying to minimize discomfort or rush through uncertainty, you can allow these experiences to unfold at their natural pace while remaining curious about what they're preparing you to handle. Instead of interpreting setbacks as signs that you're on the wrong path, you can recognize them as course corrections that guide you toward approaches better matched to your authentic development. Instead of feeling isolated in your struggles, you can appreciate that you're participating in the same fundamental process that guides all conscious growth, from Piaget's children learning about conservation to adults navigating any significant life transition. What Piaget discovered through his observations of children like Marie revealed something even more extraordinary about this preparation process. The universe doesn't just create challenges before important moments. It creates very specific types of challenges that develop exactly the capacities you'll need for what's coming next. In 1957, Piaget documented the case of 8-year-old Thomas, who had been struggling with what seemed like a simple spatial reasoning task. Thomas could successfully navigate his neighborhood, ride his bicycle to school, and build complex structures with blocks. Yet he couldn't accurately draw a map of his bedroom or describe the route from his house to the park using directional language. For months, Thomas showed frustration with these seemingly abstract spatial tasks while demonstrating sophisticated spatial intelligence in practical situations. Piaget realized that Thomas was experiencing a specific type of cognitive preparation that would prove essential for his transition into formal operational thinking several years later. The frustration Thomas felt with mapping and directional description wasn't a learning disability or developmental delay. It was his mind's way of identifying the gap between his intuitive spatial understanding and the abstract representational skills he would need for advanced mathematical and scientific reasoning. The universe, in this case manifested through his school curriculum and natural developmental pressures, was presenting Thomas with exactly the challenges needed to bridge concrete spatial experience with abstract spatial representation. The breakthrough came during a session where Piaget asked Thomas to build a three-dimensional model of his bedroom using blocks, then create a map of the same space on paper. For the first time, Thomas could see the relationship between his spatial experience and spatial representation. His hands moved confidently as he constructed the block model, each piece placed with certainty, born from intimate familiarity with the actual space. But when he turned to the paper map, his confidence evaporated. He stared at the blank page, then at his block construction, then back at the page. Suddenly, his face lit up with the same expression Piaget had seen in Marie years earlier. "The map isn't the room," Thomas said, his voice carrying the excitement of discovery. "The map is like a picture of the room from above, but they're connected. The map tells the story of the room." Thomas had just experienced what Piaget called a representational breakthrough, the moment when a child's mind develops the capacity to hold both concrete experience and abstract representation simultaneously while understanding the relationship between them. This cognitive leap would prove essential when Thomas encountered algebra 2 years later, where he would need to manipulate abstract symbols that represented concrete mathematical relationships. The months of frustration with mapping weren't wasted time or unnecessary struggle. They were the precise preparation his mind required to develop representational flexibility that would serve his intellectual development throughout adolescence and beyond. You can see this same pattern operating in your own preparation for important transitions, though the challenges might look quite different from childhood spatial reasoning tasks. The communication difficulties you experienced in your last relationship weren't just personality conflicts or bad timing. They were opportunities for you to develop emotional articulation skills that your next level of intimacy would require. The creative blocks you faced during your previous project weren't signs of diminished talent or motivation. They were your artistic consciousness, identifying the gap between your current expressive capacity and the vision you were trying to bring into the world. The leadership challenges you encountered in your former position weren't evidence of inadequate preparation. They were precise training for the decision-making complexity you would face in your next role. The universe's preparation process operates with what Piaget called developmental synchronicity, the uncanny way that internal readiness and external opportunity align to create optimal conditions for growth. Children don't randomly encounter conservation tasks when they're developmentally ready to understand them. Their natural interaction with physical reality provides countless such opportunities. But their attention becomes focused on these tasks only when their cognitive development can productively engage with them. Similarly, the opportunities that appear in your life aren't coincidental timing. They emerge because your expanding consciousness has reached the point where engaging with such opportunities would stimulate rather than overwhelm your continued development. Consider the job opportunity that appeared just as you were beginning to feel constrained by your current position. From your perspective, the timing might have seemed stressful, even inconvenient. You were just starting to acknowledge your dissatisfaction with your current role, just beginning to imagine what different work might feel like, when suddenly you had to make a concrete decision about a specific alternative. But from a developmental perspective, this timing was perfect. Your consciousness had developed enough awareness of what was missing from your current situation to recognize the value of what was being offered, while your dissatisfaction had created enough motivation to overcome the natural resistance to change. Earlier in your development, you might not have recognized the opportunity as significant. Later, you might have become too attached to your complaints about your current situation to risk the uncertainty of transition. This synchronicity extends beyond career transitions to every domain of significant change. The person who becomes available for relationship just as you're completing the internal work necessary for mature partnership isn't coincidental timing, it's developmental alignment. Your emotional growth has reached the point where you can recognize and appreciate someone operating at a compatible level of consciousness. The creative collaboration that emerges just as your artistic vision outgrows what you can accomplish independently isn't lucky networking. It's the natural result of your expanding creative consciousness, attracting and recognizing opportunities for expression that match your evolved capacity. Piaget's documentation of this process revealed that the universe's preparation operates through what he called progressive approximation, where each challenge builds specific capacities that will be required for subsequent challenges of increasing complexity. Thomas's struggle with spatial representation prepared him for algebraic thinking, which later prepared him for geometric proof construction, which eventually prepared him for the kind of abstract reasoning required for architectural design. Each stage of preparation develops capacities that become foundational for the next level of challenge, creating a developmental trajectory that appears random from within the experience, but reveals elegant design when viewed from a broader perspective. Your current period of preparation is simultaneously completing your readiness for the immediate transition you're anticipating, while laying groundwork for developments you haven't yet imagined. The emotional resilience you're building while navigating uncertainty about your relationship status is preparing you not just for deeper intimacy, but for the kind of vulnerability that leadership, parenthood, or creative expression might require years from now. The problem-solving skills you're developing while bringing your current project to completion are expanding your capacity not just for this specific creative challenge, but for the increasing complexity of vision and execution that will characterize your artistic development over decades. The elegance of this system becomes apparent when you stop trying to control or accelerate the preparation process and instead allow yourself to be curious about what capacities are being developed through your current challenges. The universe isn't testing your worthiness for what you want, it's developing your capacity to handle what you're ready to receive. Every moment of uncertainty, every obstacle that requires creative problem solving, every relationship conflict that demands emotional growth, every professional challenge that stretches your competence beyond your comfort zone is precisely calibrated to develop the specific aspects of your consciousness that will be required for your next level of effective functioning in the world. This brings us back to Marie and her moment of breakthrough with the conservation task, but now we can see her experience as more than just a child learning about liquid quantity. Marie was experiencing the same fundamental process that you're navigating right now, the way consciousness prepares itself for expansion by creating exactly the conditions necessary for growth. When she finally understood that pouring water between containers didn't change the amount, she wasn't just learning a fact about physical conservation, she was developing the cognitive foundation for understanding that essential qualities can remain constant despite surface changes. This insight would later enable her to understand that friendships could deepen even when friends moved away, that her own identity could remain stable even as her interests and abilities evolved, and that love could grow stronger even during periods of conflict and challenge. Piaget followed Marie's development for several years after her conservation breakthrough, documenting how this single cognitive leap created cascading improvements in her reasoning across multiple domains. Her mathematical understanding accelerated rapidly as she grasped that numbers remained constant regardless of how objects were arranged. Her social skills flourished as she developed the ability to understand that people's essential qualities persisted even when their behavior seemed inconsistent. Her emotional resilience increased dramatically because she could maintain faith in positive outcomes even during temporary setbacks. The preparation period that had seemed so frustrating while she was experiencing it proved to be the precise foundation required for years of accelerated development that followed. This is what's happening in your life right now, though you might not yet be able to see the full picture. The challenges that feel like cosmic interference are actually developing specific capacities that will serve not just your immediate transition, but your continued growth for years to come. The communication skills you're refining while navigating current relationship complexities will enhance every future intimate connection you build. The creative problem solving you're practicing while bringing your current project to completion will inform every artistic endeavor that follows. The emotional regulation you're developing while managing uncertainty about your career will provide stability for every professional challenge you'll face. The universe isn't creating obstacles to test your determination. It's developing your capacity to thrive at levels of complexity and responsibility that would have overwhelmed your previous version. The most profound aspect of Piaget's discovery was his recognition that this preparation process never ends. Adults continue to experience cycles of equilibrium, disequilibrium, exploration, reorganization, and new equilibrium throughout their lives, each cycle operating at increasing levels of sophistication. The executive who masters leading a small team will eventually feel constrained by that role and begin experiencing the cognitive conflict that prepares her for managing entire departments. The artist who achieves technical mastery in one medium will find herself drawn toward experimental approaches that challenge everything she thought she knew about creative expression. The partner who develops emotional intimacy in romantic relationship will discover new depths of vulnerability and connection that require further growth in communication and empathy. Understanding this perpetual nature of development transforms how you approach not just your current transition, but your entire relationship with growth and change. Instead of expecting to reach some final state of completion where challenges disappear, you can appreciate that each level of mastery opens doorways to new domains of learning. Instead of interpreting recurring patterns of preparation and breakthrough as evidence that you're not making progress, you can recognize them as spiral development, where you revisit similar themes at increasing levels of depth and sophistication. Instead of feeling overwhelmed by the prospect of lifelong growth, you can find excitement in the knowledge that your capacity for learning, creating, and contributing will continue expanding as long as you remain open to the preparation process. The children in Piaget's laboratory teach us something essential about navigating this process with grace and effectiveness. They approached each cognitive challenge with natural curiosity rather than anxious attachment to specific outcomes. When Marie struggled with conservation tasks, she didn't interpret her difficulty as evidence of personal inadequacy or cosmic unfairness. She remained engaged with the problem because the challenge itself was intrinsically interesting. When Thomas felt frustrated with spatial representation tasks, he didn't abandon the effort or blame external circumstances for his confusion. He continued experimenting because the learning process satisfied something fundamental in his developing consciousness. You can cultivate this same quality of curiosity and engagement with your own preparation periods. Instead of focusing primarily on when your current challenges will resolve, you can become interested in what capacities they're developing. Instead of trying to minimize discomfort or accelerate transition, you can remain present with the learning that's available in each moment of uncertainty. Instead of interpreting setbacks as signs that you're on the wrong path, you can view them as valuable feedback that guides you toward approaches better aligned with your authentic development. This shift in perspective doesn't eliminate the difficulty of growth periods, but it transforms their meaning in ways that reduce suffering while increasing effectiveness. When you understand that your current struggles are precisely calibrated preparation for capabilities you'll need next, you can endure temporary discomfort with greater equanimity. When you recognize that the universe's timing reflects your developmental readiness rather than arbitrary external forces, you can trust the process even when you can't see the complete picture. When you appreciate that every challenge is developing specific aspects of your consciousness that will serve your continued growth, you can engage with obstacles as opportunities rather than simply enduring them as necessary evils. The journey you're on right now, this period of preparation that feels so intense and sometimes overwhelming, is evidence that your consciousness is expanding towards something significant. The universe recognizes your readiness for greater complexity, deeper responsibility, and more sophisticated contribution to the world. The preparation you're experiencing isn't punishment or delay. It's the careful development of capacities that will allow you to thrive at your next level of functioning. Trust this process, engage with it curiously, and know that everything you're experiencing is preparing you for possibilities that your current perspective can't yet fully imagine. If this exploration of development and growth has resonated with your own experience, I want to invite you to continue this journey of understanding together. You're clearly someone who thinks deeply about personal development and isn't satisfied with simple answers to complex questions. The kind of person who watches content like this is often on a path of continuous learning and growth, looking for insights that can illuminate not just what to do, but why development unfolds the way it does. There's something special about finding a community of people who share this commitment to understanding the deeper patterns of human consciousness and growth. Every week, I create content that explores these profound questions about how we develop, how we learn, and how we can navigate the inevitable challenges of growth with greater wisdom and effectiveness. If you'd like to continue exploring these ideas together, consider subscribing to join a community of people who are committed to understanding the elegant design behind human development. We're all walking this path of growth together, and there's tremendous value in sharing insights and supporting each other through the inevitable cycles of preparation and breakthrough that characterize conscious living. Next week, we'll explore another fascinating aspect of Piaget's work that has profound implications for adult development. We'll look at how the stages of cognitive development continue to operate throughout our lives, and specifically examine what Piaget called formal operational thinking, and how most adults never fully develop this capacity, which explains why so many people feel stuck in repetitive patterns and unable to solve complex problems creatively. It's a topic that could completely transform how you approach learning and problem solving in every area of your life.